and welcome to another episode of Bulldog Profiles. I'm your host, Kylie Lindquist, Assistant Principal for Curriculum and Instruction here at RB, and I am back in Studio A of RB TV, very excitedly, to bring you another episode of Bulldog Profiles where you will get to meet new faculty and staff members here at RB. I'm very excited today to have April Brown joining me, who is new school counselor here at RB. Welcome, April.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited to get to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more. You are one of my most exciting experiences of hiring this year. I had the privilege of being on your interview committee.
That is very humbling. Thank you.
And I'm so excited to introduce you to our viewing community.
Yes.
So stepping into the role of a school counselor at RB, how did you get here? What was the path that brought you to, you know what, I think I'm going to be a school counselor?
So I think it kind of took some twists and turns, but they're all connected. So my mother was an educator. She retired from the Chicago public school system. Because she was an educator, that meant that, you know, I was around it all of the time and exposed to it. So I thought that I wanted to be a teacher. And then through life and experience, it kind of took a slight detour. I think through just like family experiences in particular, it just led me to more so on the counseling side of education versus being in the classroom. I will say I have had experience teaching people of all ages from preschool through adults. And I did learn in that experience that being in the classroom wasn't my niche. I can honestly say it because I experienced it. And even taking a detour into law enforcement that kind of happened while I was teaching adult education. I was located inside of Cook County Jail. I didn't work for Cook County Jail, but the organization I worked for was housed inside of Cook County Jail. So, like I said, I've always had a passion for education, so I was doing something that I was passionate about, but I caught the law enforcement bug, I guess you could say, working in that environment. An opportunity presented itself. I kind of consider myself to be a risk taker. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna try that. And I had already gone back to grad school for school counseling because just because of my background, it was just a must that I go back to school. And I knew I wanted to work in education, but not in the classroom. So I kind of took a detour with law enforcement, but even in doing that, I still saw myself, well, not saw myself, but I was actually involved with mentorship. Whenever I, encountered maybe an adolescent, if I had to go up to the school for a call or truancy or a runaway, I always found myself in a counseling role. And even at the time, during the time that I was in law enforcement, I had began the process to begin a mentorship program with other female officers. And I did it until I didn't love it anymore. And it just brought me right back to home base. And it took some time. I went back into education after leaving law enforcement for some time, just because I wanted that experience of being in the classroom again, working with students again. So I was able to work in, I guess you could say as a dean, in middle school. And I worked with students that had IEPs as a resource teacher until I was able to find the perfect position. It took some time, and I'm happy that in my first counseling position that I was able to land a job here at RB.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of just where I am.
That's the path. That's quite a path, absolutely. So how long, you talked about the law enforcement and that, I remember seeing your resume and seeing that pop off and thinking to myself, oh my gosh, not just that you're a police officer, there's so many variables. You're a police officer, you're a female police officer, you're a woman of color,
Absolutely.
right? There's so many things that make that experience so unique. How long were you in law enforcement in that capacity?
I was in law enforcement for 5 years.
Okay, so you're a police
in patrol,
woman.
absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Working midnights. I was the only female on my shift.
Yeah.
So that in of itself, yes, like it was interesting to say the least.
Absolutely.
And then being a mother.
Yeah.
A single mother.
A single mother, a woman of color, a woman police officer working midnights.
Yes.
That is someone who has some resolve, right? That is quite an experience. And I love that you mentioned when you were in that role as a police officer, you saw yourself capitalizing on those experiences to mentor.
Absolutely.
What did that mean to you? And what do you think it was just the education background that kind of called to you for that mentorship? Was it that you were a woman, that you were a mother? Sort of, what do you think was kind of the glue for that?
I think it was kind of all of those things.
Sure.
I think in life, like we were born to do certain things, and working with adolescents in the educational realm is just what I was born to do. Like no matter what else I tried, it has led me right back here. So in law enforcement, just like in the mentoring aspect of it, I think that's just naturally who I am.
Yes.
I'm a mentor in some capacity. And then working in a town, a city, a community with individuals who looked like me.
Yes.
And I saw young ladies in particular who just needed guidance, and they didn't have women in professional roles who look like themselves that they could look up to. And I saw that as being a huge need in the area that I served.
Yeah.
So it was just my way of giving back.
Absolutely.
But I just felt like at a certain point, it just wasn't fun for me anymore. And there's everything that was going on, between law enforcement and civilians.
Yes.
Being a woman of color.
Yeah.
I just felt like, and then my experiences in law enforcement, I just feel like working with youth in that capacity, I felt the need to catch the youth before they entered the criminal justice system. So I was like, well, what does that look like? I had already, gone back to school for school counseling.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this is how I can do my part to, amongst other things, to help kind of deter youth
so it doesn't
from going
get to
in
the
that
point
direction.
where you're meeting them as a police officer.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how has the transition been, right, back into the education world? Do you feel like I made the right step? Do you feel like you're kind of fulfilling that mission of your own?
Absolutely. I knew I've gone in the right direction when I don't even think about law enforcement anymore.
Yeah.
And I wake up every day. It's easy for me to wake up every day. I look forward to coming to work. So that lets me know, and I have felt so welcomed here by staff.
Good.
Admin, parents, and students, that I know this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked to a lot of students who have you on their caseload, and it's always been very positive. You are one of 6 counselors downstairs, and you are the only Black counselor at RB currently. What is that like for you to walk into a school or to a building as a person of color, as a woman of color, and be sort of groundbreaking in some of those areas where it's the first time that our students have seen, our Black students, for example, have seen a school counselor who looks like them?
Yes.
What does that mean to you? What is that? How does that? Is it a weight that's carried on your shoulders? There's probably more emotions about that than you can tell me in one episode.
I think initially when I was offered the position, it was like, wow, this is a huge deal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I am the first Black counselor in the history of this school.
Absolutely.
And that's a major, that's a deal.
Yeah.
That's groundbreaking, like you said.
Yes.
So I think with that, I don't feel like there's pressure because I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yes, of course.
I just feel like I'm in the right spot. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yes, you are.
And, I just, hopefully I don't hit too many bumps in the road, but I just want to bring, I guess, a different side to counseling and just kind of touch on different topics with my students, all students. You know, just things that haven't been touched upon.
Sure. A new perspective.
A new perspective.
That we desperately have needed.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad that you're here to provide it.
Thank you. I appreciate
Every time I see you, I smile as big as I can. You can't see it under my mask. But it has been an absolute joy for me to get to know you and to work with you and now to welcome you on the show. We are so very lucky to have you at RB.
Thank
April.
you. I'm very lucky to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for joining me as well, and we hope that our viewing audience will be back for another episode of Bulldog Profiles soon enough. Take care.